Her desk smelled faintly of peppermint and printer ink. Sharp, clean, decisive. The kind of smell that doesn't ask for permission to exist. Papers lined up in neat stacks. A mug that read, "I read contracts for fun." Cute, but she wasn't kidding. I placed the document in front of her. "I want to start with the power of attorney," I said. My voice didn't tremble this time. "Revoke it. Today." She looked at me over her glasses. The kind of look that quietly measures how much of your courage is real. "Are you sure, Mabel? That's a big shift." "I'm sure." She didn't ask why. Maybe she didn't need to. Maybe she'd seen enough women like me. The ones who've spent a lifetime apologizing for wanting their own lives back. She just nodded. "All right. We'll file the revocation today. I'll notarize it. You'll need to sign a few things, but I'll make it easy." I sat back, watching her print the forms. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. This wasn't revenge. This was repair. "I also want to adjust the will," I said. "Remove Carl as executor. Remove him completely." That made her pause. "You want to cut him out entirely?" "Yes," I said quietly. "He has a house, a family, a life. He doesn't need what I've saved. And honestly, he's already shown me what he values." She didn't argue. She just opened a new document. "Who should take his place?" "I don't know yet," I admitted. "Maybe someone professional. Someone who doesn't look through me like I'm already gone." She typed, efficient as ever. "And the house? The house goes to no one in the family. Sell it. Give the money to the women's shelter on Greenway Avenue." Her fingers froze above the keyboard. I could tell she wanted to ask why that one. But when I reached into my purse and placed a worn brochure on her desk, she understood. "I stayed there once," I said. "Before Carl was born." She didn't say anything after that. Just nodded and clicked a few boxes. "You're very clear about this, Mabel." "I've been unclear long enough." When the papers were ready, I signed each one with careful, steady strokes. She notarized them, stapled them neatly, and handed me copies. "If you change your mind." "I won't." The air outside felt sharper than before, bright, almost metallic. The kind of air that makes you aware you're breathing. Some days, you carry your own weather. I pulled my coat tight and walked back to my car. At home, the phone blinked red. One voicemail. "Hey Mom. Got your message about the legal stuff. Not sure what's going on. Jody said you were acting weird last weekend. Anyway, call me, okay?" I didn't. I deleted it. Then I blocked the number. The next morning, I called a locksmith. A young man came, polite, efficient, curious but not intrusive. He changed the locks on both doors and handed me 4 new keys. I made copies, labeled them, tucked one in my purse, one in my fireproof box, one with K next door, and one in the bank deposit box. That night, I slept better than I had in years. No dreams. Just rest. When I woke, the house smelled like rain. Soft, steady, unbothered. I stepped outside, scissors in hand, and trimmed the marigolds that had slumped toward the soil. The shears felt solid in my grip. Controlled. I wasn't pruning flowers that morning. I was pruning the past. And that was only the beginning. The rain hadn't stopped all morning. That soft metallic kind of drizzle that lingers more than it falls. I stood at the kitchen window, watching drops crawl down the glass, tracing their own escape routes. By noon, I'd made up my mind. It was time to go to the bank. The branch looked smaller than I remembered. Quieter. No long lines, just the hum of printers and the faint clinking of coins being counted behind the counter. I walked up to the front desk. "I'd like to speak to a manager." A woman named Trina appeared a few minutes later. Neat bun, calm eyes, the kind of person who knows how to handle both money and secrets. She led me into her glass-walled office. "What can I help you with today, Mrs. Hemsworth? I want to review all authorized users on my accounts." She turned to her computer. "You currently have 1 cosigner and 1 authorized cardholder. Carl J. Hemsworth. Your son." I looked her straight in the eye. "Used to be." Her fingers hesitated above the keyboard. "Would you like to remove him?" "I'd like to erase him." She paused, probably not used to hearing that word in this building. "Completely." "Yes. Remove access, cancel the card, Reissue everything in my name only. I also want new security questions, new login credentials, and a personal lock on the account until I show up in person." She nodded slowly, typing without another word. The printer hummed softly beside us. I stared at the plant on her desk, a pothose, its leaves shaped like little green hearts, trailing down toward the floor. I used to have one just like it in Carl's nursery. He tried to eat the dirt once, and I'd laughed so hard I nearly dropped the diaper bag. Funny how memories rot differently depending on who's remembering. When the papers were ready, she slid them across the desk. "If you'd like, we can set up alerts or a trust later." "Not yet," I said. "I'm still building the next version of my life." She smiled, not the polite kind, the knowing kind. When I walked out of that bank, I didn't feel victorious. I felt clean, like I'd finally washed off years of invisible fingerprints. At home, I went straight to the hall closet, the one with the photo boxes and the unfinished quilt. I opened the fireproof lockbox and took out the stack of my most important papers. The deed, the insurance, the birth certificates. I pulled out Carl's and held it for a moment. Not to destroy it, just to separate it. I slid it into a folder labeled History and tucked it into the bottom drawer, away from everything else. That night, I pulled out my old address book. The one with yellowed tabs from the 90s, still faintly smelling of pen ink and time. I flipped to see Carl, Jody, Ruby, Trent. One by one, I drew a slow, deliberate line through each name. Then I turned to L and wrote a new one. Lena Moore, Attorney, Trust and Estate. When I set the pen down, my hands weren't shaking. The rain had picked up again outside. I opened the window just enough to hear it tapping on the roof. It didn't sound lonely. It sounded honest. By Sunday morning, Kay came over, holding banana muffins and her usual curiosity. She talked about the stray cat under her porch, how they'd named it Vernon for no reason at all. I listened, smiling more than speaking. After she left, I read the Sunday paper cover to cover and circled a small apartment listing. 2 rooms, ground floor, washer and dryer included. Just enough. Not for escape. For preparation. Because the next time someone wondered aloud why I was still alive, I wanted the answer to be simple. To reclaim everything I gave away too easily. Monday morning, I called the real estate attorney Lena had recommended. His name was Charles Lindell. His voice, calm, grounded, the kind that doesn't rush to fill silence. The kind of voice you instinctively trust. "I'd like to discuss title changes and property transfers," I said. He gave me an appointment for Thursday. That left me 3 days to gather everything. And I did. Every paper, every receipt, every thread of proof that this house and this life were built by me. The dining table became my war room. The deed. The tax records. The repair invoices from the last 20 years. The roof Carl said wasn't worth fixing. The furnace he told me not to replace. The plumbing he swore could wait. All of it. Every ignored warning and every quiet act of defiance, filed and labeled neatly. When I stepped back, the table looked like evidence. Not of a crime, but of a woman who'd finally stopped apologizing for surviving. That night, the phone rang again. Blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. "Mabel, it's Jody. Look, we don't understand what's going on. Carl's been trying to reach you. Ruby's been asking about you. We're all worried. Please call us back." I turned off the machine. The lie hung in the air like cheap perfume. They weren't worried. They were uncomfortable. There's a difference. When my birthday came last month, not a single call, not a single visit. Just a Facebook comment from Jody. "Hope you're having a great one." Beneath a photo of her dog. I'd baked myself a single cupcake that day, lit a candle, and blew it out alone. They weren't worried now. They were startled by the sound of my boundaries locking into place. Thursday came. I wore my navy cardigan. The one with mother-of-pearl buttons that still caught light when I turned my wrist. I arrived 20 minutes early. The receptionist offered coffee. I declined. My hands didn't need caffeine for what was coming. When Charles walked in, he looked exactly how I'd imagined. A man who listens first. The kind of presence that doesn't try to fix your voice when it cracks. "I want to transfer the house into a trust," I told him. "No one in my family has access. Not now, not later." He nodded. A living trust is simple enough. You'll be both trustee and beneficiary for now. When you pass, it can go wherever you choose. I want it sold, I said. Everything liquidated. The proceeds go to the Greenway Women's Shelter in full. He raised an eyebrow. No family inheritance. No. He didn't push. Just made a note. Professional, but with that faint softness people carry when they've known grief up close. I also want to remove Carl from any and all documents where he might still be listed as a beneficiary. He looked at me, not with pity, but understanding. That can be done. For 2 hours we went through forms, clauses, signatures, contingencies. He explained each line with calm precision. And as I signed page by page, I could feel something inside me start to click back into place, like bones aligning after a long dislocation. When it was over, he handed me a slim binder. This is your trust packet. Keep it safe. Everything else we'll file this week. I thanked him and walked out of the office with a strange new feeling. Not relief exactly, but weight. Like my spine had found its purpose again. On the way home, I stopped at a small bakery on Main Street. I hadn't been there in years. The girl behind the counter was new. She called me ma'am and gave me a free cookie for being lovely. I bought a lemon tart. Sat in my car. Ate it with the sun warm on my knees through the windshield. For the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't feel like someone waiting to be chosen. I had chosen myself. It started with the sound of gravel under tires. Slow. Hesitant. Familiar. I knew that rhythm. You don't forget the way your child's car sounds when it pulls up. Not even after everything. I didn't move at first. Just sat in the living room, tea cooling in my hands, watching the shadow slide across the porch through the curtain. Then the engine cut. Silence. And then, the knock. 3 short raps. Not angry. Not soft. Just testing. I knew it was him. Mom, please. I just want to talk. His voice. That half-gentle, half-guilty tone people use when they're hoping the door between you and them isn't as heavy as they made it. I didn't answer. He knocked again. Louder this time. You changed the locks. You blocked my number. What's going on? I let him speak to the wood. Sometimes silence says everything words can't. After a few minutes he tried again, his voice softer now. I just want to understand. Understand? He'd been ignoring me for years. Understanding had been an option back when I was knocking, not now. When the sound of his car finally faded down the street, I stood, walked to the window, and watched him go. His shoulders slumped. His face looked older than I remembered. Or maybe, I just stopped seeing him through the lens of wanting to be loved. I sat back down, poured myself a fresh cup of tea, sugar no milk, and said out loud, if they don't hear you softly, they'll hear the silence louder. My mother used to say that. I think she'd be proud of me today. The next morning, I woke early. The air smelled like rain and change, that soft metallic scent that sneaks in before the storm. I slipped on my boots, stepped outside, and started trimming the hedges. I swept the porch, replaced the burnt bulb above the door, even straightened the doormat. Not because anyone was coming, but because I was leaving soon. I wanted the house to look cared for. It wasn't the house's fault. This place had seen everything. Frank's laughter. Carl's first steps. My own quiet undoing. 43 years of love, loss and in-between. As I moved from room to room, I took notes in a little pad. Leave the curtains. Take the quilt. Donate the cross-stitch. Keep the measuring cups. Each decision was a thread, untangling my life from there's one object at a time. In Carl's old room, the curtains still had the tiny sailboats. The closet still held a box of baseball cards and a shoebox labeled private. I didn't open it. Some ghosts deserve their privacy. Instead, I sat on the bed and looked out at the crooked apple tree. The one Carl climbed when he was 7. The same one that caught him, scraped him, scared him half to death. I could still hear his wailing. Don't tell anyone, Mom. And I never did. It's funny how silence becomes a family tradition. That night, I made tea again. The ritual of it steadied me, and sat by the window. The street was quiet. The kind of quiet that hums. I wasn't waiting for headlights anymore. Just breathing. And then the phone rang. Not the house phone. My old landline was unplugged. My cell. Unknown number. I almost didn't pick up, but something in me wanted to know who still dared. Hi, Grandma. Ruby. Her voice. Smaller than I remembered, but real. Like a light I thought had gone out. I wasn't sure if this was still your number, she said. It is. A pause. I found it in one of Dad's old phones. He doesn't know I'm calling. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. Why are you calling, Ruby? I wanted to say I'm sorry. For what? I almost asked, but I let her speak. For not talking to you. For pretending not to see you at the library. For laughing when Mom said that thing about you. Her voice cracked. It wasn't funny. I just wanted to belong. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't rush to make it easier. I didn't patch her guilt with softness. You can come back, I said quietly. But not for pie. Not for gifts. Only for truth. I can do that, she said. When she hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time. The phone still warm in my hand. Maybe some doors don't need to be slammed. Just gently locked from the inside. With the window left open, for those who knock with care. The next morning, I started packing. Not because I had to leave, but because I finally wanted to. And when I did, I had no idea my son would show up one last time, trying to stop me. But that peace didn't last long. Because that evening, I heard the sound of tires crunching on my driveway. And I knew exactly who it was. And that's when I made the call that would change everything. The one that set the real battle in motion. It happened 2 days before I was supposed to move. I'd just finished sealing a box labeled Keep. The morning light was soft, pale. The kind of light that tricks you into thinking peace will last. Then I heard it. The engine. Same low hum, same hesitant idle. Carl. I didn't even have to look. The air shifted. Like the past had just parked outside my house. He didn't knock right away this time. I think he stood there for a minute, staring at the door, rehearsing whatever version of himself he thought I'd still open it for. Then came the knock. 3 firm taps. The sound of a man who still believes he has the right to be heard. I met him at the door, but I didn't open it. You blocked me, he said, his voice tight but not loud. You changed everything. Why? I studied him through the glass. The face was older, lined, but familiar. Except the eyes. The eyes were tired in a way that wasn't from time. It was from entitlement meeting resistance for the first time. I heard what Jody said. I replied quietly. In the backyard. And I heard you laugh. He flinched. I didn't mean it, Mom. You know how she is. She just talks. I shook my head. No. A joke needs a punchline, Carl. That was just cruelty with good posture. He ran a hand through his hair. I didn't know you were there. That's exactly the problem. His jaw clenched. So that's it? You're erasing me? Over one bad afternoon. I almost laughed. One afternoon. Carl, it's been years. Years of being tolerated, not loved. Of being invited out of guilt, not joy. Of you pretending I was lucky just to exist near your family. This isn't erasure. This is release. He looked past me, like maybe if he could see into the house, he could find a version of me that still folded herself small. But that woman was gone. Ruby said you're letting her visit, he muttered. I am. So she gets a pass? No, I said softly. She asked to come back. That's the difference. You waited until your name started vanishing from papers to remember mine. He blinked. This is about money. No, I said. This is about dignity. For a second, I saw him, not as the man, but as the boy he used to be. The one who used to line up his toy dinosaurs on the windowsill and give them names. That boy had once loved me without shame. But this man didn't know how. He swallowed hard. I'll always be your son. And I'll always be the woman who gave you more than she should have. Then I did the hardest thing I've ever done. I closed the door. Not slammed. Just closed. Through the curtain, I watched him linger on the porch, his face half-shadowed, like even the light didn't want to choose sides. Then he turned and left. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel righteous. I cried. For exactly 7 minutes. I counted. Not because I regretted it, but because endings deserve their own ceremony. Then I made tea, packed another box, and placed it by the door marked keep. The kitchen table was nearly bare now, just one teacup, a lamp, and a small bowl of oranges. I didn't need much anymore. Just what fit inside one small life. That Sunday, I did something I hadn't done in years. I hosted tea. No versas. No holidays. Just warmth. Marcia came first, still limping, still sharp. Then Ida, wearing her fur-trimmed coat even though it was too warm. And Nora, smelling faintly of spring and old paper. We didn't talk about Carl or Jody. Not once. Instead, we talked about shoulder pain, grocery prices, the kindness of bus drivers. We laughed about socks with whales on them and poetry groups at the library. And for the first time in years, the air in my kitchen didn't feel heavy. It felt like breath. At one point, the conversation faded. That gentle hush that happens when women over 70 drink tea and feel seen. I didn't plan to speak, but the words came anyway. I'm moving. 3 sets of eyebrows lifted, but no one asked why. Ida leaned forward. Does your son know? He doesn't need to. Marcia nodded. Good. They stayed another hour. Helped wash the cups. Wrapped the extra slice of cake in foil. Said they'd call soon. When they left, the house was still, but not empty. I walked through each room again, not to say goodbye, but to bless what was ending. In the hallway, I stopped at the shelf where I used to keep framed photos. Carl's wedding, Ruby's birthdays, family portraits that had grown hollow with time. Only one photo remained, me and Frank, laughing on the porch the day we painted it yellow. I was squinting at the sun. He was grinning at me like I was something worth seeing. I wrapped that photo in a towel and placed it in the box labeled Essentials. That night, I opened my journal and wrote one line. 3 women drank tea in my kitchen today. No one interrupted. No one explained. No one corrected. We just existed. That line meant more than all the fake Christmas letters I ever wrote. Filled with polite lies and forced gratitude. This wasn't gratitude. This was rebirth. But peace never stays quiet for long. The next morning, Jody showed up at my door. Heels, lipstick, and the kind of anger that always hides fear. The doorbell rang at 10:42 a.m. sharp. That detail stuck with me because everything about Jody was always on schedule. Even her confrontations. I knew it was her before I even opened the door. The knock wasn't curious like Kay's, or careless like Carl's. It was practiced. When I pulled the door open, there she was. Heels too high for the weather. Coat the color of wet bone. Lipstick perfect. Like she'd drawn it with a ruler. Mabel, she said, like my name was a formality she didn't want to bother with. Jody, I replied, stepping aside. She didn't wait for permission. Just walked in, her perfume hitting the air like a challenge. She stopped in the center of my living room. Not sitting, not relaxing, just standing like she was staging a photo in her own defense. This is getting out of hand, she started. You've blocked Carl, changed your accounts, Ruby's sneaking around to see you, and now I hear you're moving. I nodded once. All true. That threw her for a second. She wasn't used to my agreement. She was used to me smoothing things over, apologizing for my existence. We're your family, she said, her tone sharpening on the word family. You can't just erase us over a bad day. I looked at her. Really looked. The tension around her eyes. The fear hiding behind her perfect posture. She wore confrontation like jewelry, polished, displayed, but never real. It wasn't a bad day, Jody, I said softly. It was years. Years of polite dismissal, of being tolerated instead of wanted. One day just happened to be the last one. She crossed her arms. We never asked you for anything. That's the problem, I said. You never asked. You just expected. Her face tightened. I don't know what Carl did to deserve this. He's a good man. Good men, I said, don't laugh when someone wonders why their mother is still alive. That cracked her perfect calm. Her nostrils flared. She took a small step closer. You think you're punishing him? You're not. You're punishing Ruby. She's confused. You're using her to prove some kind of point. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of how quickly guilt still tried to crawl back into my lap like a house pet. She came to me, I said quietly. On her own. She's 16. She knows what a closed door feels like. You've always made things dramatic, she snapped. No, I said. I've always made things possible. The words came out sharper than I intended, but they felt right. I took a step closer to her, not threatening, just steady. The down payment on your house? Me. The babysitting, the school pickups, the casseroles, the quiet acceptance at holidays when I was seated near the trash bin so I wouldn't be too close to the music. That was me. And now when I finally say no, you call it drama. She turned away, pacing, trying to keep the upper hand that no longer existed. You're exaggerating. You've always been difficult. I smiled. Is that what women become when they stop handing over their silence? That stopped her. Her mouth opened, then closed. She noticed the boxes near the door. You're really doing it. I am. What happens when you're alone in that little apartment? When no one's there to check on you? When Ruby forgets to call? I'll still have myself, I said. And I'd rather be alone with honesty than surrounded by people who flinch at my presence. She scanned the room again, maybe hoping the house would back her up, but the walls had already chosen sides. You're throwing everything away, she said finally. No, I replied, placing my binder of legal documents on the table between us. I'm choosing what to keep. She stood there for a long second, jaw tight, eyes glassy but refusing to break. Then she grabbed her purse and moved toward the door. Before she left, she turned. Don't expect us to come running when you change your mind. I'm not running, I said. And I won't. The door closed behind her with the quiet certainty of a chapter ending. That evening my phone buzzed, a text from Ruby. She came home fuming. You okay? I smiled and typed back. Perfectly. Some doors need closing, Ruby. Doesn't mean you're on the other side. A pause. Then her reply came through. Still bringing cookies Thursday. Don't bail. I didn't. And I wouldn't. Because by then, the paperwork was complete. The trust filed. The power returned to its rightful owner, me. But I didn't know that before the week ended, my granddaughter would bring me a gift. One that would remind me what real legacy looks like. The doorbell rang at 3:30 on Thursday. Not sharp. Not demanding. Just gentle. When I opened the door, there she was, Ruby. She stood on the porch with a plastic container in one hand and a magazine in the other. I brought cookies, she said, grinning shyly. And this. The cookies were chocolate chip. The magazine had one of those silly quizzes on the cover. What type of flower are you? I laughed. You first. We sat on the porch, legs tucked under us, pencils in hand. By the end of the quiz, I was apparently a lilac, quiet, observant, easily underestimated. Ruby was a marigold, resilient, impossible to uproot. That checks, she said, grinning. We ate cookies straight from the container, crumbs dotting our laps, sugar sticking to our fingers. After a while, she spoke softly. Dad says you're turning your back on family. I didn't answer immediately. I sipped my tea. Let the breeze carry the sting out of the air. He's hurt, she added. It doesn't excuse it. But it's all he talks about. Then he's finally talking about something that matters, I said. She looked down at her knees. I miss the old you. I nodded. No, sweetheart. You miss the version of me who let herself be erased quietly. That wasn't me. That was survival. She didn't speak for a long time. Just nodded, her eyes glistening with something she was too young to name. Then she reached into her bag. I made something, she said. I don't know if it's any good. She handed me a folded piece of paper, soft from being opened too many times. When I unfolded it, I saw a pencil sketch. A woman sitting at a table, back straight, eyes forward. In front of her, a chessboard. On her side, only 2 pieces. On the other, a full set. But the woman's pieces were in winning positions. She's not done, Ruby said quietly. She's just starting to play her game. My throat tightened. I couldn't speak. Can I hang it in your new apartment? I finally asked. Her face lit up. Really? You'd want that? I'd be honored, I said. As the sun sank behind the rooftops, she stood to leave. I know this doesn't fix everything, she said. But I want to be around. If you'll have me. I smiled. I will. But only as you are. No pretending. She grinned. Marigolds don't pretend. When she left, I stayed on the porch long after the light faded. The sketch still warm from her hands sat in my lap, her quiet rebellion wrapped in graphite lines. I realized something then. Maybe legacy isn't what we leave behind. Maybe it's who finally learns to stop repeating our silences. That night, I didn't journal about grief or anger or loss. I wrote one sentence. I am finally teaching someone what freedom looks like. Then I placed the drawing on the kitchen counter, where it would be the first thing I'd pack. Tomorrow, I would start boxing up the last pieces of this house. And for once, I wasn't mourning the end. I was preparing for the beginning. The next morning, I woke up with a strange calm, the kind that comes before big change. It was moving day, and I had no idea what it would feel like to finally lock the door behind me for good. I woke up before dawn on moving day. No alarm. No sound. Just knowing. The air was heavy and still, like even the house was holding its breath. I made coffee in the same chipped mug I'd used for 20 years. The one that had survived 3 moves, 1 marriage, and too many apologies. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't need to. I knew every inch of that house in the dark, every creak, every dip in the floorboards, every whisper of a life that used to fit inside its walls. By the time the movers arrived at 9, the sun had started to stretch across the windows, pale gold, almost shy. 2 young men. Polite. Efficient. They moved with the kind of respectful quiet you rarely see anymore. They looked a little surprised by how few boxes I had. Each one was labeled. Kitchen. Keep. Closet. Donate. Memories. Do not open yet. They didn't ask questions, and I didn't offer stories. Some things don't need explaining. By noon, the house was nearly empty. It didn't echo. It sighed, like a tired body finally let go of holding me up. I walked through every room one last time. My fingertips grazed walls, doorknobs, the edges of counters, not to cling, but to thank. She looked up at me. Are you still angry? I smiled. No. I'm finished. She stayed until nearly 10. We didn't talk about Carl. She didn't ask, and I didn't offer. Some threads don't need tying. When she left, she hugged me tighter than she ever had before. The kind of hug that says, I see you now. After she was gone, the apartment felt warm, almost glowing. I stood there, one hand over my heart, and whispered, this is what peace actually sounds like. The next morning, I walked to the corner store for milk. The man behind the counter nodded like he already knew me. You're the banana bread lady, he said, smiling. The kid with the bike talks about you. I laughed. That's me. I bought a newspaper just because I could. Then read it on the balcony with my feet tucked under me, sunlight brushing across my knees. Bills still came. The world still turned. But for the first time in years, the silence inside me wasn't heavy. It was restful. A few days later, a letter arrived. No return address, just my name written in shaky handwriting I hadn't seen in years. It was from Carl, and what it said changed everything. It came on a Wednesday morning. Plain envelope. No stamp. No return address. Just my name, written in the shaky, familiar handwriting I used to see on birthday cards and thank you notes for casseroles. Carl. For a long moment, I just stared at it. I didn't want to open it. Not because I was afraid of what it might say, but because I wasn't sure what I'd do with the pieces of me it might stir up. I made tea first. Poured it slow. Sat by the window. Let the steam fog my glasses until everything looked softer. Then I opened the envelope. Inside, one sheet of lined paper, torn from a notebook, folded twice. The words began simply. Mom, I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if you want me to. I said things I can't unsay. I let things happen that I should have stopped. I don't know how to be the man you deserved, and I'm scared it's too late to learn. But Ruby talks about you every day now. She's different. Braver. And that came from you. I'm sorry. I hope one day you'll let me try? Asterisk. I read it once. Then again. The first time I felt the ache. The second time, I felt the distance. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the drawer beside Frank's old note. The one that said, stay open. Stay warm. I didn't forgive him. Not right away. But I didn't throw it out either. Some words aren't meant to be answered. Some just need a quiet place to rest. That night, I sat at my desk, journal open, pen in hand, and wrote. I am not angry anymore. I am not waiting at windows. I am not watching porches. I am not a forgotten guest at someone else's table. I am building my own. It felt like the last line of a prayer that had been waiting years to be spoken. The next morning, I turned 73. No balloons. No phone calls from people who remembered me once a year out of obligation. No brunch. No half-hearted gifts. Just morning light spilling through clean curtains, the smell of rain in the distance, and the quiet rhythm of my own breath. Steady enough. I made pancakes too. Ate them with honey and sliced pear. Then I sat in the middle of my little apartment, the photo of Frank propped on a chair beside me, and said aloud, "Well, we got here, didn't we?" Around noon there was a soft knock. Ruby again. She held a bunch of tulips, red ones, still wrapped in the paper sleeve from the florist. "You're not a birthday cake person," she said. "So I brought flowers. Like grown-ups do." She handed me a small envelope. Inside was a card she'd made herself, hand-painted, not printed. 2 chairs on a porch. One empty. One with a teacup resting on the arm. Inside it read, "Thanks for keeping a seat for me." I almost cried but didn't. Instead, I poured us tea. We had tea and toast and talked about her exams, her summer plans, and how she wanted to volunteer at the shelter. She said she was trying to convince her school to start a support group for kids who didn't feel like home was home. She asked if she could use my name. "Only if you use it for something true," I told her. Ruby laughed. "That's the only way I use it now." Before she left, she looked at me for a long time. "You look different," she said. "I feel different. You look like someone who doesn't flinch." After she was gone, I sat by the window with my tea. The tulips were starting to open, red, radiant, alive. I thought about all the years I spent waiting for someone to see me, to choose me, to love me right. And I realized I was never waiting for them. I was waiting for me. The woman who stopped apologizing for her quiet. The one who stopped mistaking peace for loneliness. The one who finally learned that walking away isn't always giving up. Sometimes it's growing roots somewhere safer. I looked around my little apartment. The books, the plant, the chair that held Frank's smile, Ruby's drawing on the wall. And I thought, I didn't lose a family. I found myself. I poured the last of the tea into my cup and whispered into the quiet. This is what surviving looks like. Not revenge. Not triumph. Just stillness, earned honest mine. And if someone asked me now why I was still alive, I'd tell them. To remember my name. To set my own table. To keep the door open just wide enough for those who knock with clean hands. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you've lived through something similar, share your story in the comments. Your voice matters. But before I end this story, I want to leave you with something. Not a memory, but a truth. The kind that lingers after the lights go out and you're alone with your own reflection.